Thomas thought he had inherited a farm, a house, a piece of land, a few old family secrets, but some inheritances come with teeth. And on this farm, the cows are waiting to be fed. Welcome to nightmares in small doses. My grandfather left me 3 things when he died: a farm, a black key with no label, and a letter inside an envelope stained with grease. The farm was 40 minutes from the nearest town, at the end of a dirt road that seemed to exist only because cars insisted on passing through it. The house was low and long, with cracked white walls and a red roof. Behind it were the pens, the hayloft, a well covered with boards, and a large barn with wooden doors so dark they always looked wet. I hadn't seen my grandfather in 8 years. My mother had cut ties with him before she died. She never really explained why. She only said that he was a man from another time, and that there were things on that farm that should not be passed down from generation to generation. At the time, I thought she was talking about land, debts, family resentments, normal things. Then I read the letter. Thomas, if you're reading this, the farm is yours. Don't sell it before the first winter has passed. Don't open the barn after sunset without bringing meat. Don't accept help from the man in the yellow house. Don't let the cows starve. They are not cows. Your grandfather, Elliot. I read it while sitting in his kitchen, with the smell of damp and dried bay leaves clinging to the walls. I laughed once, alone, because the brain does that when it is still trying to push fear over to the side of the ridiculous. Then I heard something behind the house, a chewing sound, slow, heavy, wet. I went to the kitchen window. The glass was fogged on the inside, even though the house was cold. I wiped it with my sleeve and saw the main pen. There were 7 cows outside. At first glance, they were normal animals. Large, brown, far too thin for a farm that, according to the inventory, had storehouses full of hay and feed. They were all facing the barn, motionless, their heads lowered as if they were praying. The sound was coming from inside. It wasn't a cow eating straw. I had grown up close enough to the countryside to know that sound. This was harder, drier underneath, like bones inside a sack being ground between stones. The black key opened the barn's padlock. I didn't use it right away. I spent the first day trying to be a rational person. I made calls. I spoke to the lawyer. I opened cupboards. I found veterinary bills with no veterinarian's name, receipts for feed that had never been consumed, and an old account book where my grandfather had written down dates, weights, and names. The names were people's names. March, Seth P., 72 kilograms, accepted. August, woman from the fountain, low yield. December, boy with no family, clean meat. I shut the book so hard that dust rose from the table. That night, before the sun went down, a van came up the dirt road and stopped by the gate. A short man got out of it, wearing a brown cap and a corduroy jacket. He had a round face, too friendly, and carried a burlap sack over one shoulder. "You're the grandson," he said. He didn't ask. He stated it. "Who are you?" "Melvin. I live down there in the yellow house." My grandfather's letter shifted in my memory like a small animal. "Don't accept help from the man in the yellow house." Melvin smiled and set the sack on the ground. The bottom of the fabric was dark. "Your grandfather was stubborn, but dependable. He never missed a delivery." "What delivery?" He looked over my shoulder toward the pen. The 7 cows had come closer to the fence. They made no sound at all. They didn't moo. They didn't breathe loudly. They just watched. "Can I come in?" Melvin asked. "No." His smile didn't disappear, but it grew thinner. "Then listen from here. They eat every 5 days. If 7 pass, they start choosing for themselves. If 9 pass, they stop telling family from stranger. Your grandfather knew that. Go away. Melvin tilted his head. Did he also leave you the pretty part of the story? I didn't answer. The land here was stone. Nothing grew. Children died in their cradles. Real cattle died with empty bellies. Then your great-grandfather brought the 7 down from the mountain. The 7 what? Melvin looked at the cows with a disgusting kind of respect. The ones that chew underneath. One of them opened its mouth. Not like a cow. The jaw dropped too far. I saw small teeth where there should not have been teeth, tight, wet rows along the roof of its mouth. The tongue was black. Melvin picked up the sack. Today I only brought scraps, to hold them over. Your grandfather died before preparing the next piece. Piece? He sighed as if I were delaying a simple task. Meat that has had a name. That's the only kind that works. The sack moved. Not much. Enough. I took 2 steps back. I'm calling the police. Melvin laughed then. Not loudly, almost with pity. Your grandfather called them once, in 1989. The officers spent 3 days in the barn. After that, the vineyard had the best harvest of the century. The cows all struck their hooves at the same time. Once, Melvin left the sack by the gate and went back to the van. Don't open it after dark without meat, he said, and don't give them pork. It offends them. When the van disappeared, the sack was still there. I should have run. If this story were meant to absolve me, I would write that I left immediately, that I drove to the city, that I handed everything over to the authorities, but that is not what I did. I stood in the farmhouse doorway until the light began to die in the fields. The sack moved again. I opened it with a kitchen knife. Inside was a dog, still alive. An old mutt with a white muzzle and a broken paw. There was string tied around its neck with a cardboard tag. Not enough? I picked up the dog and took it inside. I gave it water. I wrapped its paw as best I could. It didn't bark. It trembled all over and stared at the kitchen door as if it already knew what was waiting outside. That night, the cows began to moo. But it wasn't mooing. It was the sound of people trying to imitate cows from inside a well. At midnight, while I slept, I was completely overtaken by nightmares and hallucinations. I was lying in bed, utterly paralyzed when someone spoke. Thomas. It was my grandfather's voice. The voice came from outside, hoarse, dry, exactly as I remembered it from the few birthday calls he made when I was a child. Thomas boy, they're hungry. I stayed still. Melvin brought too little, the voice said, not enough to even dirty their teeth. The dog appeared beside me. She began to whine. I covered her muzzle with my hand, more to calm her than to silence her. My grandfather's voice breathed on the other side of the door. Your mother cried on the first night too. My body went cold. She came back, the voice continued. Everyone comes back when the land calls for the right blood. I didn't answer. Even if I had wanted to, I couldn't. Something was preventing me from speaking. After that, the nightmares stopped. In the morning, I found hoof marks all around the entire house. On the walls, almost 2 meters above the ground. I spent the next 2 days trying to leave the farm. The car wouldn't start. My phone lost signal every time I crossed the gate. The dirt road seemed to stretch whenever I walked. Once I walked for almost an hour in a straight line and found myself back beside the well, covered with boards, with the cows watching me from the pen. On the 3rd day, the dog, because I had realized by then that she was female, began to improve. I named her Lola, for lack of a better name. She slept by my bedroom door and growled whenever the barn made noise. On the fourth day, I found the real will. It was inside a metal box, buried at the bottom of the wood-fired oven. It contained old documents, photographs, and a contract written by hand on thick paper. My great-grandfather's signature appeared at the end. I'm not going to copy all of it. There are sentences I don't want to put into the world any more times than they already have been, but the idea was simple. The 7 belonged to the farm. As long as they were fed, the land would bear fruit, pests would not enter, the family would keep possession, and death would pass around the house without coming through the front door. In exchange, they had to receive human flesh. Not just any flesh, not old corpses, not bodies found after accidents. It had to be flesh delivered with intention. Someone chosen, someone brought, someone who, in the final moment, knew they were being given. The contract said that was what made the meal true. I vomited into the sink. Under the papers were photographs. My grandfather as a young man standing in front of the barn, a younger Melvin beside him, my great-grandfather with an axe, and a photograph of my mother, perhaps 17 years old, sitting on the kitchen step with blood on her boots and an expression I'd never seen on her in life. On the back of the photograph, written in her hand, was one sentence: "No inheritance is worth this." On the 5th night, Melvin came back. This time he didn't bring a sack. He brought a woman. She must have been about 60. She had gray hair tied in a scarf, a bruise on her jaw, and her hands bound in front of her. She was conscious. She staggered, but she knew where she was. "No," I said before he spoke. Melvin pulled her by the arm. "Her name is Laura. She has no children. Her husband is dead. Her house will fall down next winter. No one loses much." The woman looked at me. She didn't ask for help. That was the worst part. She looked at me like someone who had already used up all her pleas before arriving there. "Let her go." Melvin shook his head. "Today is the 7th day since the last true meal. You can already hear them in the walls, can't you? Tomorrow they start coming out during the day. After that, they choose." Behind the barn, the cows moved back and forth. They were excited. The barn doors trembled from the inside out, as if something were pushing against them. But I had just counted the 7 cows in the pen. If they were all outside, then whatever was inside the barn was not one of them. There was something else in there. "Why don't you deliver her yourself?" I asked. Melvin smiled. "The farm is yours." That was when I understood the trap. He wasn't the owner. Maybe he never had been. He could help, bring, clean, lie, but the delivery had to come from the family. The pack did not want accomplices. It wanted heirs. Laura spoke for the first time. "Your grandfather always cried." My throat closed. "You knew him." "Everyone here knew him. Everyone ate bread from this land." Melvin pushed her toward me. "Take her." I didn't. The sun was already touching the mountains. The light was red. The cows began striking their hooves against the ground, not in a rhythm of impatience, but like someone counting. 1, 2, 3. Lola came out of the house growling. She placed herself between me and Melvin, thin, limping, ridiculous in her courage. One of the cows turned its head toward her. I saw the hunger move. "No," I said. The cow opened its mouth. I heard the teeth inside grinding in layers. Lola attacked before I could grab her. She leaped at the fence and bit the cow's muzzle. For 1 second there was chaos. Wood breaking, the dog whining, Melvin shouting at me, Laura fallen on the ground. Then the cow pulled Lola into the pen. I won't describe what they did. I'll only say this. A dog is not enough. The The 7 turned toward me with blood on their muzzles and their hunger intact. Melvin was pale. Now you've offended them. The first cow passed through the fence as if the wood were dry grass, its body folded sideways to fit between the broken boards, bones cracking and rearranging themselves. When it straightened, it no longer looked entirely animal. Its legs were too long, its skin hung loose. Beneath it, things moved in opposite directions. Melvin dropped Laura's rope and ran for the van. He didn't make it. The smallest cow caught him by the gate. Its mouth opened from its muzzle to its chest. It wasn't a bite. It was a door closing. Melvin screamed my name as he disappeared. The other cows stopped. They chewed. The earth around us sighed. Laura began to cry softly. I ran to her, cut the ropes, and pulled her into the house. I closed the door, locked it, pushed the table against it, as if that would help. Outside, the 7 were chewing Melvin. For almost an hour, I listened to the sound of bones being worked with patience. Then there was silence. Laura sat on the kitchen floor, trembling. Did they accept him? I asked. She looked at me as if I were a child. They accepted his meat, but it wasn't a delivery from you. As long as you are the owner, you are the one who has to choose who feeds them. Before dawn, the land changed. The dead weeds beside the well rose up green. The dry vines behind the house thickened before my eyes. Small shoots broke through the stone floor of the kitchen, opening cracks in the tiles. The farm was happy, but not the barn. The doors kept trembling. Laura explained the rest to me while drinking water from the glass with both hands. Melvin had been my grandfather's supplier for years. He chose people no one would look for quickly. People in debt, drunks, old people with no visitors, passers-by. In exchange, he received part of the harvests and the promise that the 7 would never cross the stream line toward the yellow house. But by running, he had broken his function. By being eaten without being delivered by me, he had fed the hunger but had not renewed the agreement. They'll ask you again, Laura said, this time by name. What if I burn down the barn? She laughed without any humor at all. You think no one has tried? I went to get gasoline from the storehouse. I tried anyway. I spread it over the doors, the walls, the dry straw. Laura stayed on the road, watching the cows. They had gone back to the pen, still and quiet, their muzzles far too clean. I lit the match. The flame caught quickly. For 2 minutes, I felt hope. Then the barn began to moo. Not the cows, the barn. The woods swelled. The flames turned dark, almost blue. From inside came a voice I did not know, made of many ancient mouths. I heard my mother's voice. Thomas, run. I ran. Not out of courage, out of obedience. I did not look back once. Laura came with me. We went down the dirt road as the sky grew light. This time the road did not stretch. Maybe because the farm was busy digesting Melvin. Maybe because my mother's voice was still holding something back behind us. Even now, 3 days after the incident, I can still feel the presence of the 7 cows. I feel them behind me, coming to collect me. I didn't feed them, and I abandoned the farm. Now they are coming after me. Laura left me last night by the bus station. She said I had to go on alone, because the farm was mine, not hers. Somehow she knew they were coming after me. Now I'm locked in a cheap boarding house on the 3rd floor, with the door blocked by a dresser and the lamp on since nightfall. Down below in the street, someone is chewing. Sometimes it seems to come from the alley, sometimes from the ceiling. 10 minutes ago, a voice with my mother's tired tone whispered from the other side, Thomas, they have come to collect what you owe them. And for the first time since I abandoned the farm, I heard 7 animals mooing at the same time inside my room. Thank you for joining me for another dose of nightmares. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to subscribe and leave a like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like even more stories to keep you awake at night, consider joining my Patreon, where you can read and listen to exclusive nightmares you won't find anywhere else. Until next time, happy nightmares.